Kakadosh Boker Tov, Shavua Tov. We are continuing with Daf Tzadik Tet Amud Aleph 99a1 Masechet Pesahim. Yeah, and we're finishing the chapter and the second portion of the Pesach. Okay, so it says Mikan Ameru Chachamim. From here, the rabbis taught us Yafesh Shetikala Chachamim, that silence is very nice. It's very apropos for the wise people. Kal v'chomer latipshim, all the more so for fools. Shneimar, as it says in a pasuk, evil macharish, right? When you have a tipesh, when you have somebody that's a fool, that he keeps quiet, chacham yechashev. We're going to consider him into a chacham. So therefore, right, that all of a sudden from the foolish guy that he was, all of a sudden now we're calling him a big chacham. So therefore, it's a very wise for the person to keep quiet. Okay, by the two dots. Shnaim shenitarvu pischehem. So what happens now if you have two individuals where their korban pesachs, they got mixed up between each other, right? Because if you remember, until now we were talking about groups. So if we were talking about before shechita, you switch one from each group, and then each one comes and they say they take their hands off, and then okay. But here, there's only two individuals. What are you going to do? There's only one, Mr. A and Mr. B. Very good. So says the Gemara, Leima matznitin de lo Rabbi Yehuda. Obviously, we have to say that our Mishnah is not like Rabbi Yehuda, right? Because if you remember, it says over there that we were permitted to actually come and take people from the street, right? In order that it shouldn't be without an owner, right? And then that's obviously going to be against Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya was we learned in the Braita. What does that mean if it's not going to be, right? What does that mean? Melamed, it's talking about that if you're not going to have, if the house is not going to have a sheep, so this comes to teach you that mitma'atin ve'olchim, that you're able to continue and going and taking away your hands from it, right? And therefore you're allowed to minimize the people that are registered or subscribed to that korban. As long as you always have one person that is still there. These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda, which means like this. Let's say right now we're all here, and let's say we have 10 people on Zoom. Yeah, Simon, you're equal 10. Yeah, and then you have, right, until everyone else goes on, I don't know how many. Yeah, and then you have here another 10 people. So what we're allowed to do is we're allowed to be minimizing. And all of a sudden, Richard finds good meat somewhere else. So all of a sudden he says, you know what, I don't want to be here. Why am I going to be here? I'm going to go to...
I didn't register for the other one. I registered for this one.
Yeah, but you're allowed to remove your hands and register another one. He's allowed to do the same thing. He's allowed to do the same thing, each one, which means that the halakha is saying is that I'm allowed, obviously we're talking about before the shechita, right? But I'm allowed, what am I allowed to do is, I'm allowed to start removing my hands from the korban. And I'm minimizing the amount of registrations or subscriptions, however you want to call it, in the actual korban pesach. I'm allowed to do that. Says Rabbi Yehuda, as long as I have one of the bnei chabura that he's always going to be chayam. Rabbi Yosef Omer, uvilvad shelo yanichu et pesach kemot shehu. As long as you're not allowed to leave the korban pesach without any owners whatsoever. Okay, which means that according to Rabbi Yehuda, as long as you're going to have one that he was the original ones, even though they all removed themselves, and now there's nobody owner. But it doesn't matter. As long as at the end of the day, there's going to be one of the original status quo, it's going to be okay.
But I thought you cannot have a Pesach for one person. Not allowed.
You are allowed to. That was the Mishnah. The Mishnah said that there were two individuals and they got mixed up. You're allowed to. We said that lechatchila, we try not to because we want to do it with a chabura, because we want that it should be a chabura, but you're allowed to do it with one person.
Can you read the whole thing?
So now, if you remember, we just continued. So the Yosef says, you're not allowed to leave the Pesach without the owners. So therefore, since in the case of our Mishnah, you have other new people that are coming, right? So the Bnei, and they weren't the original, right, status quo of this subscribers. So for sure, this is not going to be like Shitat Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yochanan says, Rabbi Yochanan afilu teima Rabbi Yehuda, even if you're going to tell me it is Rabbi Yehuda, Kevan da Rabbi Yehuda, since Rabbi Yehuda says, En shochtin et Pesach al yachid, you never, right, you're not allowed to do it on the yachid. That means what you were mentioning was Shitat Rabbi Yehuda. Shitat Rabbi Yehuda is that you're not allowed to do it on a yachid. That was a Mishnah above in Tzadik Aleph, Amud Aleph. Yeah, you want to go there?
No,
91,
okay.
91a.
You don't have to go there.
So 91a, the Mishnah said it. Over there, there were a few Mishnayot. It says over here like this: En shochatin et pesach al yachid. These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Ve'Rabbi Yosef matir. Says Rabbi Yosef that it's going to be permitted. Yeah,
there's a lot of waste. You have to burn what you don't eat.
Exactly, 100%. Yeah, vafilu. That's what it says over here. Oh, so it says here that he has to eat minimum of a bit of a kazait. And by the way, you should know that's how we paskin like Rabbi Yosef. Even though again, as I already just said, that the Rambam says that lechatchila we try to do like Rabbi Yehuda, right? But halakha l'maaseh we would do like Rabbi Yosef, that even on an individual, right, we would do it. Okay, so fine. Then it says over here, right? So mikara lamnuya charina badekai ukecha b'nei chabur adami, which means that since according to Shitat Rabbi Yehuda, it is prohibited to bring it by yourself. So therefore, it comes out that this Korban Pesach already was designated to bring it with somebody else, not the original person, right? And therefore, they already consider B'nei Chabur Adami, which means like this. We had a question. We said that maybe Be'emet, in our case, it's not going like Rabbi Yehuda, right? Why? Because according to Shitat Rabbi Yehuda, you always need one of the original people to be there. Here, you don't have one of the original people to be there. So we answered it is like Rabbi Yehuda. Why? Because an individual can never bring a Korban Pesach. So since the individual can never bring a Korban Pesach, automatically there was somebody, even though we don't know who he is, right? But there was a magic hidden somebody that was already there because you can't bring it by himself. So therefore, because of that, when we do come and we bring somebody else there, so therefore it's going to be okay. So says the Gemara as follows. Amar Ravashi, says Ravashi, Matnitin Nami Daika, Sadiktet Amud Aleph, right? We're 99a, right? Our Mishnah is also, you could deduce it like the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda. Tektani, because we learned in the Mishnah, and also we had 5 chaburot of 5 people each. So chamisha in, aval shel chamisha, right? It says over here, ve'arba'a lo. He says this would only help if you're going to have chaburot of 5 and 5 and 5. But not in the case where you're going to have a chabura that the original one was 5, right? And now the next one is only going to be 4. Why? He says, La mishum de lofai ishchabim ne chabura gabe. Is it not because there's not going to be anyone from the original, right? The original korban that's going to be left over? Shema mina, that's what we actually learned, which means that you could actually bring a proof from our Mishnah like Shtat Rabbi Yehuda. One more time. What did Rabbi Yehuda say? Rabbi Yehuda taught us 2 halachot. Halakha number 1, which was the Mishnah above in 91a, that you're not allowed to bring the Korban Pesach by yourself. Right? You always need a group. Right? Doesn't matter how big of a group, but you need a group. Right? Minimum of.
Doesn't it say here that you need a minimum of 5 people?
No. So that there was a minhag to bring even of 10 people. Right? But there it was actually 5. But here it says we could bring a proof that it was like Rabbi Yehuda, because there it kept on comparing all the cases were of 5. Which means this one had 5 and that one had 5. So one second, why is it that this one had 5 and this one had 5? Why can't this one have 5 and this one have 4? So he says, no, because if you're going to do such a thing, you don't have from the original group, right, of the status quo, and you always need from the original group.
I don't know what you mean this one had 4. I'm not following that last.
One more time.
The last statement, I don't follow.
One more time. What do we say in the Mishnah? The Mishnah said we had five groups of 5, correct? So it's mashma over there that only if you had 5 in each chabura. So then our Mishnah helps that what you're able to do is that you switch, right? What do? You put one person of that group over there, one person of the other group over there, and then they come and they tell this guy, listen, right? It all depends. If this was your Korban Pesach, so therefore we are going to come and take away our hands from our group, and now we're joining you. And if this is our Korban Pesach, so you're going to take away your hands from your group, and now you're joining us. And the same thing. It's like a type of a breira, but basically what they did was they did this in order to get out of the problem.
This is before Shpita. They're saying,
yes.
Yeah.
But this was our Mishnah. Our Mishnah said this. Yeah?
Can he switch out groups, or he can only be Yotzei Korban?
No. He's allowed to switch off the groups here. That's what we just said. You're allowed to switch off groups. Now, the Gemara, though, now is trying to deduce why is it that we had to always compare it with the same amount of numbers? Meaning there was one group of 5, another group of 5, another group of 5. Why were there always groups of 5? Why can't you have one group of 5 and then the next group was only going to be 4?
Might be the expense of the group.
So he says the reason why is because since we were talking about 5 groups of 5, each one of them could have one of the original one. Meaning you have 5 groups of 5. So one of each group is splitting up between the 5 different groups. If you only have one group with 4, that original group will not have one of those original. Meaning that you only could do a 5 groups of 5, so that way one could go in each one, and each one comes and says, okay, if this was mine, so then you guys are taking away your hands from your korban and you're joining me. If this is yours, so I'm taking away my hands from my korban and I'm joining you. And each one is able to do that for the 5. But if there's going to be one group of 4, that guy is never going to have one of the original. You don't have that original, but that group of 4 is 1, 2, 3, 4. There's missing one. So because of that, that's when it's going to be the problem.
But how come the group of 5 and one of them of the group of 5 can go to the group of 4 and then they become 5 after they eat the korban?
Yeah, but one of those groups of 4, what happens if their korban was the other one? So each one has to go to another one. So therefore, nobody would be left over in the original of that group of 4. Remember, according to Shitat Rabbi Yehuda, you always need that one of the people are still of the original group. Now, if you have 4 people, right, now they have to divide it between 5 groups. How do you do that? Unless you're going to cut somebody in half, right? Which so means 1, 2, 3, 4. The last group will be left without one original, and you can't have one without the original. That's what the Yehuda just told you. Okay, so that's what he says. Shema Mina. That's what the Kashki tells us. That means it comes out that the Mishnah was always also going in accordance to Rabbi Yehuda. And Adran alach mishayat tameh uslik ala pesach sheni. So we just finished the chapter. And we finished the second part of the Korban of the Pesach. If you remember, the Masechet Pesachim was divided, right? We already did the first part. This is now the second part. So now we just like put a close to the page, right? We just turned the page, and now we just finished the chapter, right? Which was basically
There's such a thing as making a
siyum just on this.
Yeah.
It's a very good question. I don't know.
Good answer.
I don't know.
Boy, it takes a wise guy to say I don't know. Tell you that.
Which one? Yeah, no, we're going to finish before Pesach. It's right before Pesach, but right, especially that this year that Tanit Bechorot is not on Shabbat. It's on Erev Pesach. Exactly. Since Motzei Shabbat is Pesach, so no, there is Tanit, but the majority of people they do the Tanit on Thursday. So it means not, this year it's not going to come out on the 13th. It's going to be so no. So we're still going to do Tanit. We're still going to do the Siyum. We're still going to do the
No
Siyum.
problem, but let's say someone must do fast.
Yeah, I'm saying that. So, yeah, because it gets pushed off before. You can't do it on Shabbat, and you're not allowed to do it on Friday. Remember, the only fast that you ever do on Friday is Asara B'Tevet, like what we did this year.
לא מקדימים
This year.
פורענות, אבל זה לא
Yeah.
פורענות.
Right? What? Yeah, no, this is nothing to do with the prunut. Yeah. Okay. Very good.
Tanit?
Which fast?
The Tanit Bechorot, the firstborn fast, which is usually done on Erev Pesach. So this year it's going to be done on Thursday before Pesach. So it's like 3 days earlier, and we're going to get out of it by doing a siyum. But look, Baruch Hashem, everyone's learning your Daf Yomi. You're going to do a siyum, Masechet Pesachim right beforehand. Yeah, so you guys are going to be able to finish it. Okay? No, but what Richard asked was the interesting question. What about here? Because here we just finished a portion of Masechet Pesachim. Because it just says that we finished, right? It said Pesach Sheni. What do you mean Pesach Sheni? Because when we already finished, okay, it was in the first art scroll, right? We finished the first one, and also meaning that they divided the Masechet into 3 different parts. Fine. Tzadik Tet Amubet 99b. Okay, Tzadik Tet Amubet, the Mishnah, new chapter 10, Perek Asiri. It says, Erev Pesachim Samuch LeMincha Lo Yochal Adam Ad Shetechshach. So Erev Pesach, when it's close to Mincha time, a person is not allowed to eat until it's already nighttime. Afilu ani shebiYisrael lo yochal ad sheyasev, which means that even a poor person of Israel, he's not allowed to eat on the night of Pesach until he's going to start leaning. Ad sheyasev, heseba, right? That's called the leaning, okay? Like the free person. Velo yivchatu lo me'arba kosot shel yain, va'afilu min hatamchui. So he says they're not allowed to give him less than 4 cups of wine, even from the tamchui, which means that even if he's getting his support from the food platter, for the food soup kitchen, or whatever you want to call it, right? You're not allowed to give him less than 4 cups of wine. He needs 4 cups of wine to fulfill the mitzvah of the arba kosot on the night of Pesach. Okay? Fine. Says the Gemara, my Erev Pesachim, why do you tell me Dafka Erev Pesach? Afilu arve Shabbat Nami. We know every single time it's Erev Shabbat or Erev Yom Tov, we have the same halacha. The Tanya, you're not allowed to eat. The Tanya was we learned in the Braita. You're not allowed to eat from Mincha onwards. In order to go into Shabbat when you're hungry. These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yosef, you are allowed to continue eating. So by the way, that was the reason why in the Chatechila, yes, on Erev Shabbat, the Purim Suda should have been as early as possible. Why? Because you want to go into Shabbat early. You want to go, into Shabbat when you're still able to eat something. I know people that they went and they had themselves a very heavy meal on Friday, right? They told me that on Shabbat, they were so full on Friday night, they weren't able to eat anything. So I went out and told them, where's the chukhmah? Where's the wisdom? That's why you have to have a small meal. You understand? We purposely didn't come and start taking out steaks and this. Okay, we took out food, but but you have to have meat. But also a certain, you're not gonna have to, you're not gonna stuff your face whether it's with bread, with this. The same halacha is gonna apply. Shabbat Hagadol. For Shabbat Hagadol, many people this year they're going to do the dirasha the Shabbat before Shabbat Hagadol. Usually on Shabbat Hagadol, which is the Shabbat right before Pesach, they give a shiur on Halachot of Pesach. This year, it's also going to be a technical problem. Why? How do you do Sudah Shlishit? Why? What do you have to do?
Has to do on bread.
So how do you do it?
You do pita bread first of all.
No, we do it for
Egg matzah.
the egg matzah.
Egg matzah.
Rich
Some
man.
people do egg matzah. A lot of people, but Sfaradim have a big problem of doing an egg matzah. You know why?
I remember
You don't
years
hold by egg
ago we did
matzah.
with pita bread.
Yeah, but you have to do it very, very early in the morning. Early in the morning. No, but it has to be early in the morning. But you have to do it early in the morning. After 10 o'clock in the morning or 11 o'clock in the morning, you're not allowed to eat chametz anymore.
No, on Shabbat.
Yeah, but that Shabbat is Erev Pesach. Erev Pesach, are you allowed to eat bread after 10, 11 o'clock?
That's a very good question.
Yeah.
No, it's
No.
open inside. It's open
Never.
inside.
So what we did?
Every Erev Shabbat. No, so what you probably did is that you probably prayed in the nets or a very early minyan. You had immediately the first meal. Then you divided the meal into two. You did Birkat Hamazon, right? And then you probably went out for a stroll for a few minutes, and then you came back, and then again you did Hamotzi. And that's what a lot of people
We're
do.
not allowed bread on Sudah Shlishit. We eat bread.
Well, on Sudah Shlishit on Pesach, it depends, but you can't
Like this year.
like this year. Well, put it this way: if you do Sudah Shlishit at 10 o'clock in the morning, yes. After 11 o'clock, no.
And you do a motzi before 10 in the morning.
You have to eat
We
your
didn't
2
eat
meals
matzah.
already.
We didn't
Yeah,
eat
yeah,
matzah.
okay.
But we did some.
What?
How about if you dip the matzah in water for Sudah Shlishit? Like it's not really considered matzah anymore. No?
No, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what to do with the matzah and water. That's another inyan of gebrachs, which is basically matzah shruya. Right? But it has nothing to do with here. Here it has to do with actually having. So this year we're going to, Lina, we'll speak about it in the halachot. But basically what's going to come out is that forget about this year about the Pesach. Let's say what happened on Rosh Hashanah. Yeah? Also, it happened on Rosh Hashanah. Sukkot. Right? Rosh Hashanah, first day of Rosh Hashanah was Shabbat. Sukkot, first day of Sukkot was Shabbat. Now, Friday night, you have the Sukkot meal, right? You have the Shabbat morning, the morning meal, which was Shabbat morning, also Sukkot. But now, that night, the second night of Sukkot is Motzei Shabbat, right? But you have to have Sudah Shlishit. Well, Rosh Hashanah was on Shabbat. Sukkot was on Shabbat. And Pesach is going to be on Motzei Shabbat. Motzei Shabbat. Yeah? So now what's going to happen now? What happens is that what you do, Sudah Shlishit. So you have to have it early. That's why usually on those years, what we do is we do an early mincha, like Plaga mincha. We do an early mincha. And then everyone comes, they do the early mincha, then they go home and they have a regular Sudah Shlishit whenever they want, right? But they have to do it as early as possible. Or even if you come back later and you do a late mincha, but even the late mincha is also early in order to have Sudah Shlishit on time. Here, though, it's going to be a technical problem because how do you do it? Right? Because Soblina, we'll get to it in the halachot. Because for Sfaradim, in order for you to eat egg matzah and to make a motzi on egg matzah, you have to have a seudah worth of egg matzah. How much is a seudah worth of egg matzah?
A lot.
162 grams. Every single, usually egg matzah, machine matzah is around 30 grams. So if you're going to have 162 grams, you're going to have basically like half a box. Yeah, like six matzot in order to make a hamotzi on that. You know what that is? You're going to be stuffed your face.
I've done it. I know. I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, very good. Fine. So says the Gemara, right? Why are you telling me only on Erev Pesach you're not allowed to eat so early? It's on every Chag. So answers the Gemara, what are we dealing with? Only according to Rabbi Yosef. Since according to Shidat Rabbi Yosef, he said, you're allowed to eat until nighttime and there's no problem. Hanamile, that's only going to be on Erev Shabbat, on Erev Yom Tov. But on Erev Pesach, because of the obligation of Matzah, Rabbi Yosef agrees that you're not allowed to, which means Rabbi Yosef argued on Rabbi Yehuda. Right? That means even though we are paskening, right? That's what it says over here. What does that mean? That means that according to Shitat Rabbi Yosef, you're allowed to eat until nighttime on Erev Pesach, Erev Shabbat, and Erev Yom Tov. There's no problem. But here Rabbi Yosef admits, he agrees that because of Pesach, the night of Pesach, there's a mitzvah sedoraita, a positive biblical commandment to eat matzah on the night of Pesach. You're not allowed to. You have to stop early in order to eat with an appetite. You have to eat with an appetite. Okay. Next answer. Rav Papa says, Afilu teimar Rabbi Yehuda. Even if you're going to tell me that it is like Shitat Rabbi Yehuda, that he prohibits you from eating also on Erev Shabbat and also on Erev Yom Tov, too close to the Shabbat to Yom Tov, because if not, you're going to be full. He says, Hatam bar Shabbat Tov Yom Tivim, mina mincha ulmala udasu. There, it's going to be asur only from mincha and onwards. Okay, but it says samuch la mincha, but close to the mincha, which is within usually the half an hour within the mincha, it's going to be permitted. Aval be'erev Pesach, but on Erev Pesach, even samuch la mincha, which is half an hour beforehand, also asur. Which means that what we're trying to say is like this: on Erev Shabbat or Erev Yom Tov, right? For example, let's say Shabbat was Erev Yom Tov, like I just told you, Sukkot. So it was also Shabbat and also Erev Yom Tov, right? Or to do with the Pesach, but this Pesach is even more, right? Because Pesach we added on. So now you're not allowed to eat from Mincha onwards. Now, what is Mincha onwards? Usually we'll be lenient that the Mincha onwards means from Mincha Ketana. So not Mincha Gdola. Remember, Mincha Gdola is half an hour after Chatzot, after midday. Mincha Ketana is 9.5 hours into the day, not 6 hours into the day. What?
Yeah. You're saying, are you talking about Erev Shabbat?
Yes, on Erev Shabbat and Erev Yom Tov, you're not allowed to eat from 9.5 hours into the day, which means 2.5 hours before nighttime, you're not allowed to eat. So, for example, I'll just give you an understanding of what we're talking about, right? Shekia is around 6:20, correct? Yeah, 6:20 is Shekia, 6:21. So,
Is the sundown.
Sundown, yeah, sunset, yeah. So here it says, what is Mincha Ketana? 3:56. So from 3:56, which is Mincha Ketana, you're not allowed to eat like a meal. Okay, this is whether it's Erev Shabbat or Erev Yom Tov. You're not allowed to eat a meal. On Pesach, you have to add on to this half an hour, meaning 30 minutes before this. So instead of 3:56, it will be, let's say, 3:26 or whatever it is. It will be half an hour before.
It's
So
the
that's
earlier mincha, not the late mincha.
No, this is the late mincha, from the late mincha. The early mincha is mincha gdola, which is a one at 1:04.
How come we're always davening mincha? If Shabbos we davening candlelighting mincha, why are we're late? If it's Shkia 6:30, candlelighting is at 6.
Right. No, but I didn't understand your question. So says the Gemara. Okay, so he says, Aval berev Pesach afilu smuch mincha nami asur. So erev Pesach, even half an hour before, it's also going to be prohibited. Uv erev Shabbat samuch mincha shari. So he says, are you going to tell me now that according to Shtat of Yehuda, you're allowed to eat on erev Shabbat samuch mincha? Meaning, just like on erev Pesach samuch. Remember, the word samuch means close by, right? You should know that whenever it says samuch, it means close by. Close by is usually half an hour. For example, Birkat Kohanim, on a ta'anit, on a fast day, you only do it when you pray mincha, semucha. What does it mean semucha? Within half an hour of Shekiah. If you pray mincha too early, for example, an early mincha, there's no birkat kohanim, right? On a fast day. We're talking about fast day mincha. But remember, on fast days is the only time they do it during mincha. Okay? And on Kippur is ne'ilah, right? But other only on...
What is a early mincha?
12? It's going to be before, half an hour before Shekiah, that's not samuch, it's not close. So since it's not close, you don't do birkat kohanim.
Okay. Merci.
Okay? Very good. Mincha Ketana, Mincha Gdola for sure not. For sure not. Even Mincha Ketana not. You have to have half an hour within the Shekiah. Okay? So now the Gemara is going to ask, are you going to tell me now that by Erev Shabbat, right, you also don't have to stop half an hour before the Mincha? Right? It should be the same thing, just like Erev Pesach. V'atanya, we learned in the Braita, Lo yochel adam b'erev Shabbat v'yom tov mitesha sha'ot ma'ala. You're not allowed to eat from 9 hours and onwards. It doesn't say 9.5. Mincha Ketana is 9.5. Yeah? Why do we know 9.5? Yeah? How do we know 9.5? It's very, very simple, because you do 3.5, right? And then you're going to have you're going to do the 2.5 and 2.5. What's 2.5 and 2.5? 5, right? So you do. You're still doing the Sudash Lishit. Okay, fine. Okay, 1 minute. Before Sudash Lishit. Right, one more time. You have Chatzot is midday, 6 hours, yeah? So until the nightfall, you're going to have another 6 hours. Now what you do is that you have that Plaga Mincha is 1 hour and a quarter before nightfall. Okay, so 1 hour and a quarter, so double that. is 2.5 hours. So 2.5 hours before the end of the day is going to be right 12 minus 12, 9.5. So therefore, what happens is 9.5 is mincha ktana. 9.5 hours into the day is
hours before the sun
no. 9.5 hours into the day, meaning you're going from the beginning of the day into the day. 9.5 hours. That's called mincha kitana. Now what?
After
30 minutes after.
No. That's mincha gdula. 30 minutes after chatzot is mincha gdula.
Gdula.
That's the first time of saying mincha. That's mincha gdula. Right? Remember, gdula just means big. What does it mean big? That means that's the biggest time that you have that you're able to say mincha. So mincha gdula is half an hour after chatzot.
9.5 hours into the day would be usually what time?
So we just said 3:56.
3:56.
3:56 is the today. That's 9.5 hours into the day. 6.5 hours into the day is mincha gdula, because chatzot is 6 hours into the day. Half an hour later is mincha gdula. So 6.5 hours into the day is mincha gdula. 9.5 hours into the day mincha ktana. Now what happens? What happens now is the following. What happens now is he says there's a braita. The braita says, when are you not allowed to eat bread or not allowed to have a seudah on Erev Shabbat? From 9 hours into the day. It doesn't say 9.5, which means half an hour before mincha ktana. So therefore, what are you telling me that on Erev Pesach we added on half an hour? Even on Erev Shabbat we add on half an hour. It says, and Erev Yom Tov, it says, Lo yochal adam b'Erev Shabbat yamin tovim tesha sha'ot umala kadei sheiknes l'Shabbat k'shutav divrei Yehuda. These are the words of Yehuda.
And that's not talking about Sudah Shlishi. That's talking
No, that's about Erev. Erev Yom Tov and Erev
Shabbat.
Shabbat. Doesn't matter. It could also be talking about Sudah. Doesn't matter what type of Sudah. But you're not allowed to have a Sudah from 9 hours and onwards. So Rabbi Yosef says you could. Which one?
2.5 hours before Shabbat.
Yeah, because if you do 2.5 hours before Shabbat, that's going to be the Mincha Ktana. Yeah? So Amar Morzutra comes in and says, Man lema landet mitarastahi. Who's going to say that this braita, you actually answered it up correctly? Dilma, Dafkufa Mudalef on the top, 100A on the top. Dilma mishabashtahi. He says, maybe Be'emet, it should be, Maybe Be'emet, this braita was a mistake. When it says you're not allowed to eat from 9 hours onwards, that braita was a mistake. It meant 9.5 hours. It was a mistake. Right? And that's what it was. Yeah, for Shabbat and Yom Tov. Meaning Erev Shabbat and Yom Tov. So maybe that was a mistake. Maybe Be'emet it's 9.5 hours. And that was a mistake. So don't ask me a question from that braita.
So
it's a mistake.
What's the whole
Okay.
Special